They don't ring bells here. The shift begins when the lower tanks belch deep enough to shake the waste rails loose from the ceiling. It comes from below floor 13 usually, sometimes deeper. That groan, that cavernous, bowel-deep pressure swell is the tower's way of saying, "You are still here." And so is it. That's what wakes me, a sound that feels like a continent turning in its sleep. I rise from my cot, slow, careful, one vertebra at a time. The implant at the base of my skull doesn't like surprises. It hasn't shocked me in 12 shifts. That's a kind of mercy by this place's standards. My collar reads the minute fluctuations in my cortex, joy, anger, or anything that resembles prayer. When it senses too much verticality in the mind, too much longing, too much shape to thought, it crackles warning static into the stem of me. My feet peel from the floor with a soft, wet kiss. Condensation again. The bunk room vents sweat at night. We call it sleep mucus. It isn't, strictly speaking, water. I wipe my soles on a strip of gauze I keep under the mattress and put on my shift wrap. Recycled derm weave, grown from lab-skin slough. The name Penitent Worker 588L is stamped over the breast, faded to the color of old rot. I don't put on the gloves yet. That comes after the hand touch. Once my robes were crimson, silk-threaded, soaked in salt wine and scrawled with ashglyphs from sermons that burned too hot to archive. I preached in alleys and creches, in clone wards and neural graveyards, to anyone whose ears still twitched for gospel. I called myself Warden of the Word. The state called me doctrinally incompatible with moral productivity. My last sermon ended in bodies. They dropped into a disposal shaft thinking it was ascension. I taught them that, or something inside me had. I never got to finish the line. They burned out my vocal cords with a surgical filament and froze me for 3 years. When I thawed, they fitted the obedience collar, right at the base, fused into the spine. Now I'm Penitent Worker 588L, assigned to Tower 12, a maggot clerk, slurry sorter, mouth sealed, hands still. But I still listen, I still remember. And somewhere under the stink, something remembers me. Through the corridor, the walls are veined, literally. Tubes like bloodless arteries loop through the surface in loose spirals. The air smells like metal and mushrooms left in a hot mouth. Every 4 steps, the floor dips just slightly. No one corrects it. Correction implies maintenance. Maintenance implies attention. Tower 12 doesn't get attention. It gets days. 7 floors down, past the sump ladders and the skeletal lift shaft, is Deck 7C, my deck, Dre's deck. The tanks here are halfway between solid and fever. Warm but not hot. They breathe but not in rhythm. The slurry on this level has density, a suggestion of pattern. Sometimes it coagulates in swirls. Sometimes it hisses. Sometimes it doesn't do anything at all, which is somehow worse. Today it's twitching. Tank 7C-13, the one near the old maggot hatch, has a tremor in the surface tension. A quiver that runs down its center like the heart of a jellyfish before it stings. I stop and wait. I don't look directly at it, just long enough for the motion to settle. When it doesn't, I do the ritual. I raise my left hand, scarred from elbow to palm with old script burns, and press 3 fingertips to the tank wall so it knows I saw it. The slurry doesn't react, not visibly, but I feel the vibration against my skin, like the ghost of a shiver moving backward through time. I pull away. Only now do I put on the gloves. Waste Tower 12 was never meant to exist this long. It was part of the Ascension Nutrition Program, one of the old state dreams back when faith was engineered and flesh was a commodity. They built it to reprocess failure, expired clones, decommissioned AI hosts, unmarketable gene stock, heretic biomass. Anything that couldn't be recycled into feed for the outer farms got poured into this tower and turned into slurry. The slurry feeds nutrient vats. It powers heat loops. But that's not what the tower does now. Not really. Now it's exile. The tower became a penal facility after the purge. They call it reclamation labor. Really, it's a tomb. We're not here to work. We're here to be forgotten while still breathing. Each floor processes a different consistency of waste. Ours is warm, semi-sentient residue, memory-rich. Sometimes you find eyes that still track light, sometimes bones that twitch, sometimes things that know your name. The first task is standard: log surface contaminants, skim tooth fragments, catalogue non-human inclusions. Floor 7C is rarely assigned active tissue, but sometimes things twitch anyway. Memory foam is the worst, not the synthetic kind. Real neural residue, congealed and unfinished. You can tell when it's in the tank because the fluid grows thick around it, slow pulsing like something about to think. There's a clerical term for it: echo-viscera. It's not supposed to form above floor 11, but the rules don't matter much here. I run the skimmer over the tank edge. It catches on something soft, a mound just under the surface, thick with marrow fleck. The readout stutters. Unid Type 3, Composite Biofrag Dental. I tilt the skimmer and the slurry parts. A tooth, human, perfectly clean, not a drop of decay on it, like it was pulled from a living jaw 5 minutes ago. That's not unusual. The tanks reprocess everything. Clone mouths, vat-grown chewers, once even an entire dental godform built for bite sermons. I lift it out with the tongs and place it in the log tray. Dre arrives an hour late. He's got that look again, like sleep fought him, and he lost. His face is dark with sweat stubble, and his left eye clicks once as it calibrates to the tank light. Still breathing? He grunts, passing me a half-sealed heat wrap. It smells like molded root fiber and regret. I nod. My voice box doesn't work until I swallow twice. Burn scar tightening. I manage a half mutter. Level 13 tremored. Shift started early. He grins like someone remembering a bad joke. That tower's got gas. You keep listening to it like it's got a plan, you'll end up like Dunnell. I don't ask what happened to Dunnell. We both know. Dunnell started writing psalms in bile on the bathroom walls, claimed he heard the first syllable of a god's true name in the drainage foam. Compliance scrubbed him 2 weeks ago. I saw Wax again, I say, voice gravel-edged, stirring the dry tank. Father Wax isn't supposed to be here. He doesn't wear a shift wrap. No collar, no number. No one remembers when he arrived or who assigned him. Some say he was born with the tower. Others say he walked down here from a floor that doesn't exist. His eyes are sealed shut with scar tissue, sockets long gone. He smells like old pages and skin left in vinegar. But he knows the tanks. He knows their moods, their cycles, their symbols. And he talks like scripture talks back. They let him stay because he stirs the old vats with a cruciform rod. And the slurry stirs back. Dre doesn't respond right away. He smokes from a resin tube, exhaling through his nose like it's less indulgent that way. Old Waxy stirs for his own ghosts, he mutters finally. Let him. Tower keeps him around because he never clocks out. Probably doesn't even know what day it is. He quoted me, I say, word for word, from Subspine, the line I gave during the breach sermon. Dre turns, slow. The light catches his salvage orb, lens twitching like an insect. That line got 32 people turned to paste in a reclamation shaft, Colt. He shakes his head and walks off, voice trailing behind like mold smoke. You want to get vaporized? Fine. But don't make the slurry think it's holy. You start feeding it belief, it'll start feeding you back. Hours pass. I finish my logs. 3 partial femurs, 1 ocular node, a set of child-length phalanges that crumbled when dried. I note the frag mass consistency, thick today, almost saccharine, like grief set in gel. Just before rest cycle, I check the tank one last time. The molar I catalogued, item 4 on today's record, is gone from the tray. In its place, a wet circle where something rested. Still warm. I don't call it in. I've done this long enough to know when not to mention what I saw. Instead, I mark the anomaly in my private ledger, scratched into the back of a disposal tag tucked beneath my cot. I draw the spiral sigil. Then I pray. Not allowed, that would trigger the collar, just in motion. My left hand moves in 3 strokes: decay, return, reception. It's not sanctioned, but it's mine. Sleep is shallow here. The tower breathes differently when you close your eyes. The sound comes not from the walls, but from inside your own mouth, like you're echoing something too large to name. I dream of teeth, dozens of them, not scattered but arranged, laid out in rings around a dark basin. Each hums a different tone. Together they speak. Only one word makes it through. Begin. I wake to Dre dragging a recirc barrel past my bunk. His boots leave prints that glisten with something yellow-green. Slurry runoff, but congealed, thick like it's thinking about forming shape. He doesn't notice, or pretends not to. "You were talking again," he says without looking at me. "In that backwards worm language you like." I sit up slow. The prayer worm in the jar near my cot twitches once, curls into a tight loop, then lies still. I tap the glass, not to wake it, but to feel the weight of the jar against my skin. It's how I check if I'm still real. "I wasn't talking," I rasp. "You weren't awake," Dre replies. "Doesn't mean your mouth was quiet." He drops the barrel near the chute with a wet slop. One of the seals is cracked. Chemical threads are curling out like dead nerves trying to grow. Dre rips a strip from his shift wrap to tie it off. It won't hold, but it's not supposed to. It's just supposed to look like someone tried. There's a new protocol sheet posted by the entrance. Paper, not digital, which means either someone wants it ignored or someone wants it remembered too well. The sheet lists volatility patterns in viscous memory forms, marked in bold red headers. Below there's a sequence of behaviors: synchronized bubbling, spiral surfacing, necrotic cross-threading. A footnote reads, "Do not interpret patterns. Report to floor compliance officer immediately." Someone's been noticing the same things I have. I keep my head down. No nods, no signs of comprehension. Protocol language like that only shows up when upper stacks start sniffing for belief formations. That means audits. That means collars triggering at prayer depth. That means forgetting. Tank 7C13 is different today. The twitch is gone, but in its place is stillness so exact it feels artificial. The surface doesn't even ripple when I skim it. No scent either, just silence, with the taste of copper. That's how I know it's active. The tank's only quiet when they're thinking. When I lower the probe, the slurry parts like warm silk. Resistance at first, then ease, like it recognizes the shape. The monitor flashes briefly, static, then a glyph, a spiral, almost identical to the one I drew under my cot. But this one isn't flat. It loops inward, self-consuming. The pattern pulses 3 times and vanishes. My collar gives a buzz. Not a full shock, just a warning. A murmur against the spine, like a fingertip brushing bone. I retract the probe. My hands are shaking, but I keep them steady. The probe tip comes up wet with something heavier than fluid. Sediment? No. It clings like pulp, sticky with biograin and the scent of old teeth. I take a sample to Father Wax. He's where he always is. Deck 8's dry vat chamber, a floor and a half below where moisture doesn't drip so much as condense in place and wait to be witnessed. The room is narrow but tall, with no reason to be either. The vat in the center hasn't functioned in 2 decades, but Wax stirs it anyway, slow in figure 8s. He hears me before I speak. "The child returns," he says without turning, "bearing gifts from the thought tide." I hold out the probe. He doesn't move to take it, but tilts his head like he's listening to the slurry on the metal. "It's forming," I say quietly. "It never stopped," he replies. "Only forgot. All thought forgets before it's remembered. That is the shape of rebirth." I glance at the wall. There are finger trails in the grime, dozens layered over each other. Some spiral, some meander, but none cross. Wax speaks without turning. "The memory protein is nesting," he says. "Your voice woke it, not your words, your absence. The hole left by your silence was wide enough for it to pour through." I lower the probe. He hums a pitch. It's the same chord I felt in the molar, the same pressure in the rib when I dream. "I need to understand it," I say, "before they see it, before they erase it." Wax turns now. His face is wrong in the light, half seen, slick with a sheen that isn't sweat. His eyelids sealed with old burn wax stretch when he smiles. "You don't understand a god," he whispers. "You make room." Later, back on 7C, I find Dre smoking near the drainage rail. He's holding his jar of biotags, flat metal identifiers from logged bodies. Most clerks throw them in the melt bin. Dre keeps them, says they buzz if you hold them near an echo vent. "You saw wax," he mutters without asking. "He said it's nesting," I reply, "that the thought tide is shifting." Dre exhales slow, smoke curling from the edge of his salvage eye. He doesn't laugh, doesn't frown, just watches the steam rise off the tanks like they're dreaming. "I knew a preacher once," he says after a moment. "Not like you, not showy, quiet kind. Carved sermons into his tongue so he wouldn't forget them. Said every god worth worshipping was born in rot, that the clean ones were lies. He went under in a slurry tank, walked in like it was a baptism pool, smiling. His body never surfaced. Just a piece of scalp with words." "What did it say?" Dre flicks the ash from his lip. "God is wet, that's all. No name, no scripture, just that." I glance back at tank 13. It's bubbling now, like breathing. The pattern it forms is unmistakable. A spiral, nested within itself. Each ripple smaller, each breath closer. The scan monitor registers nothing, but I know what I'm seeing. A phrase forms behind my eyes. "Speak us. Speak us back." The phrase repeats with the confidence of inevitability. It does not demand, it waits. The longer I watch, the more the surface begins to unflatten. The space around the tank thickens. The air becomes meatier, more mineral, like standing in a cathedral not built from stone but marrow. And then, something rises. It isn't fast. It doesn't break the surface like birth. It emerges, as if it was always part of the tank and only now remembered it should be seen. A bulge, flesh-colored but translucent, begins to dome upward from the center of the slurry. It tapers as it ascends, forming a near-perfect spindle. Smooth at first, then striated, like tree growth rings crossbred with spinal tissue. The tip glistens with neural gloss. I step forward instinctively, no thought, just a kind of reverence I've trained myself to hate. The thing quivers, a line opens along its length. Not a mouth, more like a seam. From within, letters. Black script formed not in ink, but etched into tissue, curling in semiosis. The body remembers. The thing dissolves the moment my intent shifts. It doesn't retract. It unbecomes. One moment it is there. The next, it is nothing but a ring of pale oil across the tank's surface. The script gone. The form forgotten by all but me. That's when the room lights shift. Not the tower lights. Those are irregular, half-burned, left to flicker as they please. No, this light is portable, clean, compliance-grade lumens. Someone from above. I smell the disinfectant haze before I see him. Formaldehyde mist mixed with memory-scrubbing gel, standard fare for upper-tier audit visits. My collar tightens in response. Archivist, them nor veil. His robes are bone white, unstained. Not even a ripple in the hem where tower mold usually stains edges. His boots don't make contact with the floor. Each step lands a few millimeters above the surface, aided by a localized field cushion designed to avoid contaminating sacred terrain. His skin is poreless, eyes grey, dead and calculating, pupils etched with a slow-scrolling ring of glyphs, data absorption interface tuned to semantic irregularities. A voice like clean glass being laid on a table. "Brother Colt." He says it as though I am both guilty and redundant. "Surveillance node 7C registered an anomaly in linguistic density clustering," he continues, as if I were a terminal waiting to confirm. "Patterned response behavior in the organic substrate, unauthorized theological formation." He stops 3 steps from the tank, not near enough to see anything, but exactly close enough to project ownership. "Your handprint was logged on this tank 42 minutes before the cluster surge. Is there an explanation?" I want to lie, but my collar prickles. Honesty encouraged under high-threat protocol. I give him part of it. There was something, a mass. It rose, had markings. Vale tilts his head a degree too far. Clinical curiosity, not human. Describe the markings. Script, Latin derivative, partial, said, the body remembers. He closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them, the ring in his pupils rotates half a turn. That phrasing exists in 17 outlawed texts, including Testament of Skin, Sermon of Bonefire, and the Third Mass of the Viscera host. I stiffen. I know those texts. I bled for them. I preached them in back alleys to dying clones with dreams of nerve redemption. Do you acknowledge authorship of this emergence? I did nothing but witness. A common claim among vectors, he replies. He turns, gestures, and 2 echo drones descend from the lift above. Shaped like ceiling lamp cages, they hover low to the tank, emitting a soundless pulse. Slurry ripples, then halts. The tank falls silent. My chest aches like something has gone quiet inside me. The record will show, Vale says, not to me but to the air, that containment protocols have been enacted. Hostile metaphor clusters neutralized, vector pending review. Then, as though we're discussing weather, I would advise against further proximity to this tank. It is now classified as a dormant linguistic hazard. He leaves without further comment. The drones follow. Only when the lift doors seal above do I breathe again. Tank 13 remains flat. Whatever spoke through it has been gagged. Later on subfloor 8, I return to Father Wax. I find him kneeling in posture of delivery. His robes are peeled open at the back, revealing spine etched in scar script. He came, I say. Wax nods. The sealant. Vale, I correct. Names are for the mouth. We are past mouths now. I kneel beside him. He silenced the tank. He paused it. The breath holds, but the word does not forget. Wax reaches into his robe and pulls something from an inner fold. A sliver of calcified tissue, thin as paper, translucent. He hands it to me. It's skin, human probably. Written on it the same phrase. The body remembers. Not ink. Scarification. The letters raised, still warm. From the core, Wax says. Gifted, not found. Why me? I whisper. Why now? He leans close. I feel the heat of his breath, warm, as if from deep within the tower's gut. Because you bled it first. Because you sang before you spoke. I don't remember leaving Wax. I know that I did. My shift logs confirm the time. And I have a burn along the outside of my left hand where I scraped the core rail on the ladder back to 7. But I have no memory of the descent, only of standing before the tank 7C. It hadn't moved in months. Stagnant, settled. The slurry inside was glass thick and sallow, crusted around the edges with clot sediment and something like biofoam. No one stirred it. Dre once said the tank had gone flat, dead beyond reclaim. But now it's quaking. It shudders in pulses like breath taken through wet lungs, tired, ragged, but deliberate. I kneel beside it. The slurry doesn't rise, doesn't bloom. It folds, an inward collapse, a whirlpool with no bottom. At its center, fragments. Bone, membrane, remnants of skull casing. All familiar things until they start to shift. They don't reassemble into a body. They arrange letters, curling patterns of fractured joint and wet tendon forming what might be a script if the tower had ever allowed it. They cluster, then separate, then cluster again. That's when the alarms sound. The tower groans, and from the main shaft comes the hiss of sealed bulkhead gates unlocking for the first time in I don't know how long. Dre appears in the stairwell. He's soaked, chest to knees, and his left boot is torn along the seam. One of the memory leeches must have gotten too curious. He doesn't acknowledge it. His eyes are fixed on the tank. "You did this?" he asks. I shake my head, slowly. "No," I rasp. He lights a resin tube with fingers that tremble only slightly. The tube hisses, too loud. He puts it out. "They drained 6A, he says. "Fully purged, 30 tanks. Why?" "They found a cortex structure, formed its own neural web. Looked too much like a spine. Vale had it scraped and ion burned before the drones could scan it properly. Said it was a false resurrection." That phrase chills me. False resurrection. It's a term from the Schism years, used by purifiers to describe bodies that woke with memory but not soul, dead things that remembered too much. They're going floor by floor, Dre says, scrubbing anything that smells like intent. And Vale's not just cleansing, he's archiving, uploading fragments, trying to build a map of belief vectors. A pause. They want you on it. That sits heavy. I expected it. Somewhere under the skin. Still, it lands like weight on the spine. Dre doesn't speak for a while, just watches the tank. I should report you, he says as if to the slurry. Get a relocation, maybe a bump. I nod. You could. He shifts just enough for his boot to squelch. But I won't, he mutters, because I've seen things I can't unsee. Tank 5B formed a throat last week, sang half a line before it collapsed, said my brother's name. He's been dead 8 years. He lights another tube. This one stays lit. You told me not to feed it belief, I say. I did, Dre says, but you didn't feed it, you bled into it. The tower shudders again. The vents open, not the ones for air, the deep vents, ones that haven't opened since the memory fire. That was 20 years ago, when a containment breach in Tower 4 ignited thousands of archived cognition cores. Thought became flame. Whole wings burned from the inside out, screaming sermons no one had written. A sour wind slides up through the spine of the building, dragging scent behind it. Iron, hot fat, and something older, like a language burnt until it forgot how to mean. Father Wax is waiting near the hatch to sub-level 12 when I arrive. He's wet. Not in the way a man gets from steam or water. Wet like something that's becoming. His robe clings. His face gleams. The eye seals on his face have started to crack. The breath deepens, he says. It calls its choir. I follow him. Below deck 10, the tower becomes something else. Walls soften, rails bend. There's a texture to everything, tenderness, half-living. On sub-level 12, the tanks don't sit upright. They lean, like drunk priests mid-oration. The slurry inside them glows from embedded proteins, cognitive residue bound to failed AI cores. You can taste the static in the air. Father Wax leads me to the center of the floor, a collapsed rig. 3 tanks joined in a crude trinity, now shattered and leaking into a central pit. The slurry here is thick with particulate, bone ash, microglyphs, and floating nodules of preserved synapse. The pit isn't deep, but it churns. Wax kneels, draws a line in the runoff with his finger. A form rises, only partially. It has no bones, only the memory of shape. A face, half-formed, smooth where a mouth might be. Eyes that aren't eyes, but sockets expecting to see. It speaks, but not with sound. My ears fill with pressure. My thoughts blur. Then, slowly, the words filter in. We are the choir below. You are the voice that broke silence. I fall to one knee. The slurry coils upward like a ribbon and wraps around my forearm. It moves like recognition. I feel pain, sharp, sudden. A sliver of bone embedded beneath my skin begins to vibrate. It's one of the fragments I took from the tank days ago. It sings, a shrill, wordless keening just under the edge of sound. My vision whitens and I'm filled with memory, not my own, something else, millions of thoughts, half-formed ideas, dead languages curled in fetal position. Wax speaks aloud. The god stirs. It is not born. It is not made. It aggregates. It chooses. You are its tongue. My hands shake. My throat opens and I speak. The words rise from the diaphragm but detour through something deeper, something hot and wet and collective. We remember the coil of limb and thought. We remember the hunger before names. We remember the faith that came after function. We remember you. The slurry moves in response. Every tank on the level groans in choral sound, low, harmonic, bone deep. Then the floor shakes. An alert siren blares from above, one I've never heard. A doctrinal cascade event. They know. Vale knows. And he's coming. I rise, the slurry still clinging to my wrist like an unfinished sentence. Wax is smiling now, wide. "You've begun the sermon," he says. "Now let the tower sing." The corners of his lips remain peeled wide, exposing ancient, glistening teeth that seem longer than they were a moment ago. His face gleams with tank sweat and something older, like oil drawn from marrow. The slurry around our knees shivers, responding to him. I can feel the god form beneath the floor now, like we're standing on the eyelid of something that just began to dream. Wax reaches for the slurry. He doesn't stir it. He lays both hands flat into it and speaks in no language I know. His tongue is slow. The syllables sound curved. The slurry foams around his wrists, threads of it rising to meet his arms in fine, quivering lines, like nerves reconnecting to their root. "Brother Colt," he says without looking up, "you will need to finish what you started, but not here." "What happens here?" He smiles wider. "The first voice must break. I feel it before I hear it. Vale's presence." Footsteps echo down the hall, not the crunch of boots or slap of leather. Float pressure displacement. He's not touching the ground. I step backward instinctively. The slurry retracts from my ankles as though fearful of contamination. Dre appears at my side. I don't know how long he's been there, or what he's heard. His jaw is clenched so tight I can see the tendons jumping beneath his skin. One of his eyes is bloodshot. The salvage orb flickers in the dim cycling aperture filters like it's trying to blink away what it can't process. He whispers, "He brought a containment spindle." My stomach knots. Then he's not here to observe. The doorway floods with light, a brightness without warmth, without shadow, without origin. Vale steps through it as if passing from one reality into another. The air warps around the hem of his robes. His body carries no scent, but the moment he enters, the old mold musk that saturates this subfloor retreats as if offended. He speaks like a man reading a sealed verdict. "This level is non-compliant. Theological interference has reached internalization phase. Stage 3 protocol authorized under Article 9A of the Pre-Breach Restoration Act." He lifts one hand. A thin spindle, bone-white and etched with static glyphs, extends from his sleeve like a stinger. "Colt Escher, you are designated as a live breach vector. You will be removed." I step forward. My voice is stronger than it has been in weeks. "You can't contain it. It's not mine. It's not even done." Vale's eyes flicker. The data ring in his irises rotates half a notch. I see the pupils dilate just slightly, just enough to read threat. "That," he says flatly, "is precisely why containment is necessary." Behind him, 2 echo containment drones unfold from the walls like silver spindles of insect bone. They emit a high-pitched tone that sets the slurry vibrating in lines across the tank walls. Script begins to form in the foam, testament fragments, until the drones adjust frequency and the words melt back into meat. Wax doesn't move. He kneels, still humming softly, as if none of this applies to him. One of the drones hovers toward him. Vale speaks a word I don't understand, and the drone emits a focused pulse. Wax explodes. He shatters, skin peeling upward in layered ribbons, flesh unthreading like soaked cloth. He makes no sound. His mouth remains open in perfect silence as his body liquefies into the slurry in a single, sudden unmaking. The pit absorbs him in less than 2 seconds. Dre moves. I don't see him do it. He's just there, between Vale and me, hand halfway to the scalpel he keeps in his boot. He doesn't draw it. He just places 1 foot forward, 1 step of heresy. Vale tilts his head. "You can still walk away," the Inquisitor says, not without a trace of patience. "You are not central to this breach." Dre doesn't look back at me. "Everything here is rot," he mutters. "You ever notice how rot sings sometimes? Before it goes soft." Vale raises the spindle. I react without thinking. The sermon comes through me. It rises like heat, like pressure finding an exit. It scrapes past my teeth with words I've never studied and yet know perfectly. The body kneels not in worship, but in remembering the weight of thought. The wet god does not wait. He gathers. He births his choir from waste, and speaks through what is left behind. The drones shriek, a high, almost human sound that vibrates the core paneling of the floor. One of them bursts mid-air, collapsing into tangled organometal fibers. The slurry around us blooms. It doesn't rise. It flowers, layers peeling upward in symmetrical rotiforms, colored in pulp red and bile gold. Vale steps back, shielding his eyes. The glyphs on his robe begin to blur. The god is answering. My knees buckle, my chest seizes. The gospel pours back into me now, but it's unstable. I feel it. The words are fracturing as they emerge. The grammar of belief is breaking under its own weight. The god can't finish forming. Not like this. We move too quickly. Dre grabs me under the arm. We have to leave, he hisses. I can finish it, I choke out. Not here. Not like this. Vale is still standing. His robes are scorched now. The spindle is gone. In its place, his own voice, low and ragged. You don't understand, he says. It was never yours. This was always going to fail. It wants to fail. It's a broken god, born from shattered thought. It's a memory of something that was never real. He stares at me, truly stares, and I see fear. You didn't create anything. You made a copy of a scream. The slurry surges behind us, taller now, pulling downward into itself like an organ folding. I feel the floor shifting underfoot, plates separating. The room is coming undone. Dre pulls me toward the stairs. Vale doesn't follow. I look back once and see him kneeling, just like wax. His eyes roll upward. His mouth opens, and then he speaks. The voice that leaves him is hundreds, all layered, none finished, a sermon of fragments. Each phrase contradicts the last. Each verse is a glitch, a gospel in collapse. He is risen. He is forgotten. He was never. Blessed be the rot. He is. He doesn't finish. The slurry drowns him in silence. We climb without looking back. The tower keeps singing, a sound with too many throats. A choir that doesn't know what it's singing anymore. The stairs warp beneath our feet, moving as though remembering how to be flesh. Dre doesn't speak. His grip on my arm is steady, but not strong. Just enough to say, not yet. Not here. Not like this. The air thickens as we rise. It tastes like pre-matter, wet minerals and thought silt, the kind of fog that forms before language. Above us, floors hum with motion. Drones swarm, pumps fire, alarms spiral in and out of rhythm. The slurry is surging not just below, but through, into places it was never meant to reach. The gospel has broken its vessel. On 7C, the tanks are already shifting. One of them has cracked open along its seam. Biofoam pours onto the floor in twitching threads, forming loops that start as spirals, then dissolve mid-pattern, unsure what they were meant to mean. I step into it, ankle deep. The foam doesn't resist. It parts, then reforms behind me. Dre leans against the bulkhead, breathing hard. Blood runs from his nose. His salvage eye is dark now, the lens burned out. He doesn't wipe the blood. He just looks at me. You said it was a god. I nod. He shakes his head slowly. I don't think it knows what that means. I kneel beside the broken tank and dip my hand into the slurry. It shivers, recoils, then accepts me. Behind my eyes, the choir rises. They want shape. They want purpose. But they are too many, too incomplete, too full of half-born scripture and memory-flesh prayer. They're forming something vast and formless, a god made from unfinished thoughts and forbidden language, a voice with no mouth. I feel them gather behind my ribs, waiting. One phrase comes through, clear and soft. Finish us. I close my eyes and say nothing. Let the god wait. Let it gestate. Tomorrow I descend again, and this time I will speak it whole.